All right, let's see if Zoom will work for us today. Last time was a hot mess.
It was, and I apologize for missing our last call. That was really unprofessional of me. I have some ideas that I wanted to present to you, unless you want to say something first.
Oh, that's fine. I'm just glad I can hear you talking this time. So,
Okay, good. I don't know if I mentioned the last time. One of the reasons I believe we help our clients is because we can take experiences from other industries or lessons that we've learned from other industries and apply it to our current client that we're trying to solve problems for. Because we can go back and keep in mind, I was working for an 85-year-old consulting company before who had a lot of history and a lot of statistics as to what worked and what didn't work and why it worked or why it didn't work. So I count on a lot of history or performance numbers in our strategies. And I kept thinking about what you're trying to accomplish. And even though the last previous calls, I had a hard time placing certain issues, I can only find some flags and saying, well, that doesn't sound exactly right, but I really don't know why, right? But after thinking about it for some time, I'm starting to understand why it didn't sound exactly right. And I'm going to start with a case study. More than 20 years ago, and I might have mentioned this before, but I think we need to go into it a little bit deeper. More than 20 years ago, I wanted to give my contractor clients an advantage, an unfair advantage. And I believe in creating a differentiator and really creating an unfair advantage. And what we wanted to do, what we wanted to create was the fact that driving around North America, you always see these old buildings, right? And these old buildings, I saw an opportunity there. If you remember the story, what was it? Microsoft went to India, or a shoe salesman went to India and saw that nobody wears shoes there and said, there's no market here, nobody shall sell shoes. Another salesman went to India and says, nobody wears shoes here. What an opportunity, right?
Perfect market.
What a huge market, exactly. I looked at these buildings and I thought, why are these old buildings still looking old? Why hasn't someone developed a system to go after these old buildings, redesign them, and make them look brand new, right? People live in these old condo buildings and they want to increase their resale value. So if we can come up with a great strategy, a great differentiator to do that, and that's where the idea came from. So we put together it was about 20 different companies we started with. And the idea was, if we share the resources by 20 companies, now the company that wants to do this type of work only has about 1/20th of the marketing costs or carrying costs. Okay, so we started by creating a differentiator. I don't have any pictures on this computer, but the differentiator was basically creating curb appeal. On one of these designs, we want to create the wow factor. We want to capture their attention. So we would commission like water features or sculptures or something to create the curb appeal and to create the wow factor. So we would use this image, and sometimes these were water fountains, sculptures, whatever it was. And we would commission these sculptures, and we would have exclusive rights to these sculptures. And we would use interior designers who concentrate on commercial work to go in and look at the current building and just create some artist sketches of what it is and what it could be, right? Then we would present this to the management company and eventually to the board. And these projects would be anywhere from 5 million to 40 million in size. And we would have the flat roofing company take care of the flat roofing, the HVAC company take care of that, with maintenance programs. The painting company would take care of the painting and wallpaper, flooring company would take care of the flooring and so on. By banding together and sharing the costs, and by taking on the whole project as a one project, we were able to keep profits high, and this strategy still works very effectively today. By keeping the competitors out, we maintain margins, and we maintain almost exclusivity on these projects. So in other words, let's say a painting company wants to come in and do the painting part of the project. On our contracts, it basically says it's either all or nothing, right? The painting company can come in and bid on the project, but now they have to find 20 or 25 other companies to do the rest of the project. Because the advantage with doing it with our group is the fact that you're dealing with one project manager who is coordinating the whole project, right? So it gives us an unfair advantage. So how can a principle like that be applied to your situation? I keep thinking about Remax, the company you mentioned. Going in to Remax alone, I don't believe it gives you a fair enough advantage alone to keep your competitors out, because now they're comparing you to other competitors. What do the other competitors have to offer? And now they're comparing you to the other competitors. If you were to go in as a group of companies to help, and you start asking questions, what does Remax want? Well, they're greedy. They want market share. They want to steal the best real estate agents. They want to get market share. They want to increase their visibility. They want to increase their branding. They want to take over the world, basically. If you give them the tools to take over the world in terms of market share, they will do that. Are you with me?
Oh, yeah.
So Remax, and again, analyzing companies for over 40 years, every company has more than one problem. And if you're not addressing their most painful problem, your problem goes on the back of the shelf until they address their main painful problem or the most painful problem. Okay. So if you're part of a group of companies that addresses and takes the focus and addresses the main problem is they're not making enough money, or they're not getting enough bonuses, or whatever the pain point is, right? Address that first, whichever way possible, by bringing in a subcontractor. And as part of the solution, your software or in your company comes in as part of the overall solution. It's the same thing we do with companies. We look at tax strategies, we look at marketing strategies, sales strategies, and everything else. But once we find out what their pain point is, that company or that service takes lead. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I believe part of your process, part of your differentiation should be looking at the company as a whole and asking straightforward questions or hard questions, and then leading with that as a solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we just did our first bigger deal. That will be a pretty large deal over the next year and a half with Intelligent Office, pretty large company in the real estate rental space. We did it with a marketing consultant because their problem was they weren't getting enough new customers. And so we actually just accidentally fell upon that concept and seen the value of it ourselves. So basically the same thing you're talking about. Right. So it sounds like, is that right?
Well, it's partially, because I remember you telling me about that before, and I thought, okay, is that going to be a one-of reward, let's call it? Or is that a conveyor belt that's going to keep delivering these companies one a week for the rest of your life? Okay. Because if you think about it, what's the most important part of any company? It doesn't matter whether your product is if you have the best mousetrap, if you took 20 years to develop the best mousetrap and nobody knows about it, what good is it? Right?
Yep.
But if you have the best marketing system or the best system to develop the relationships so you can sell a mediocre mousetrap, you're going to be much further ahead. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay. So if you look at every company's problem, every company's problem is the fact that they don't have a conveyor belt of profitable clients being delivered to them on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. Okay. So if you develop that system for them, and that's what we do, we develop systems like that to bring a conveyor belt of ideal clients to them on a regular basis. And I think that's what you need. And I think that's a system you need to develop for your clients as well.
Okay.
Okay. So if you look at, this is what we call building trusted relationships with future potential clients, because every company, in my opinion, should be developing relationships with clients you're going to need 1 to 5 years from today. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, and this is the conversation where I kind of hinted on before. Are you product centric or are you client centric? And most people say, well, we do both. Well, no, you can't do both. You can't specialize in both, because either you're one or the other. Either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant, right? So if you're focused on the product, it's going to be at a sacrifice of the client.
Okay. Yeah, it's I don't know. That's kind of a harder question, because we're trying to build the product line to be versatile to reach the client's needs based on whatever their needs are.
Right.
And so we've made a versatile product. So at one side, when you're a tech company, you have to be product focused at some point. Otherwise, your product roadmap gets off and you're in some tangent where it's not useful to anyone.
Agreed. I agree. But how I would change that statement is your people need to be product centric. The CEO has to be client centric. The CEO has to be the visionary. Because when the CEO gets dragged to daily activity, how can he maintain the visionary status?
Oh yeah, it's an absolute nightmare.
Right. So I believe that's where we can help you, is we need to develop, if I were in your shoes, I would surround myself with 3 to 20 different companies that are looking to service the same type of client that I'm looking to service, and create a relationship where it's a win-win-win type relationship. And that way you're sharing marketing costs as well.
Yeah, so looking for strategic partners, basically. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's a term that's thrown around very loosely, and nobody really follows through. It's a cliche term that most people throw it around, but really don't understand or don't utilize what it really means.
Yes, it's definitely a cliche term. It's just a general term that businesses use to explain that, or a channel partner, which is just someone that's funneling it into an existing channel. but yes, it's definitely more of a cliche term. There's no real more specific terminology for it.
Yes. And that's why I don't like to use it, because then the response is, yes, we're doing that. Right? As soon as you hear, yes, we're doing that, it means the conversation is over and we cannot go deeper with that conversation. There has to be a blueprint. There has to be an understanding. There has to be the spirit of the agreement that everyone is pulling towards the same direction and everyone benefits. When one company starts benefiting more than other companies, then the group starts breaking apart, and it doesn't work anymore. The original group of companies that we put together more than 20 years ago, no one has ever left. We keep adding to the group, but no one has ever left, because there's a huge advantage being part of that group.
Makes sense.
Okay. But if you look at other strategic partnerships with other companies, those break and come and go every day. There has to be that spirit and the true understanding that we're all going to benefit if we all follow this policy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so basically what you all would come in and do is help us like put together the system to find the right type of relationships, the right partners to bring in. We'll just use the vague term partners.
Yeah.
So that we can dually come together and approach same companies with this unique solution of all the services in one, instead of just here's this one service, or here's the whole system, start to finish, that will help you continuously grow your company.
Yes.
And so for that side of it, I mean, how do you normally structure those deals where you all benefit?
Well, the way we structured that deal was probably not the most advantageous to us, because my goal was not to line my pockets. My goal was to make my clients successful. So my goal, and what ended up happening, is each client can become one of my clients, and I get paid from the fees that they pay me, either consulting fee or whatever type of fee it is. But I would backtrack a little bit. In 40 years of analyzing companies, now mind you, these are smaller companies. These are companies that are in the 10 million to 20 million range. I would say 80% of my clients are in that range. You're reaching for the billion-dollar companies. But in my range, very few of those companies actually understand their goals and have the right goals. I've looked at $100 million companies who don't have the right goals. So I don't believe in the client being the expert. I believe that your company has to be the expert and tweak their goals, because chances are their goals are based on what they feel they can accomplish, or based on their talents, or based on their previous success, right? Based on their narrow vision, they develop their goals based on their history filters. They're not basing their goals based on what can be accomplished by learning from other industries and using the best tools possible. So their goals could be different based on new knowledge, new information, new services that your group brings to the table.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, not even the billion-dollar companies have everything right. Like we've started the conversation of moved up the ladder through all the sales department in one company. I think they're a $5 billion company, and we've got all their interest, and we're pushing it to the CMO now in the company. But we figured out a process that was failing for them and was costing them millions of dollars that we could help fix.
Okay.
So that's those are kind of interesting things to get into, and that's why we're seeing there is a lot of value in having a consultant that's part of these deals, helping identify these areas that are causing them a lot of trouble. Like for them, it's going through marketing to an SDR. The SDR calls the BDE and tells the BDE about the person. Once they qualify them, then the BDE then has to call the client, and that whole process is stupid. I mean, that's the best way to put it. It doesn't even make sense. So, I mean, we're already looking at like, how do we eliminate the phone call on one side? How do we take 15% of their people, the only people they said would actually take this without talking to the SDR? And so those 15% of people, will eliminate the SDR in the conversation at all. The other 85% are older. They won't do this. They won't use the system. So then the SDR will fill it out for them while they're on the call. Then it automatically transfers to the BDE, which is going to save them exponential amounts of time and money, and will increase their ROI exponentially. So that's what we figured out with them. So having a consultant, if we're accidentally falling on these areas, having a consultant in the mix, I can already say just the consultant alone. There may be other opportunities we throw in the mix too. I'm not discounting that there's definitely more opportunities. That's just one we just accidentally figured out. Having a consultant in the mix is ridiculous in what you can actually do, what you can accomplish for that customer. Because there's more than just, here's the software, like a lot of software companies do. Here's the software, have fun. That's kind of how I feel the system's done. This is like, let me help identify what the problem is. Let me create this solution with you that actually fits that need, and then have a consultant with it that's monitoring it and helping refine other sides of that company's processes to create it the most efficient system that they've ever used. And then you put the two together, and I think it could be wildly successful. It's not something that's really done, especially in software. Software is very me focused, and you probably experienced this. A lot of software companies are like, here's our software. It's the best thing in the world. Use it, and you'll make all this money. Well, 98% of clients don't.
Right. And well, with smaller companies, that software tends to sit on the shelf for months and months and months or years without being used, because nobody had the proper onboarding process. Nobody created the need for them. Nobody showed them the light, right? Going back to Remax as an example. Now, Remax would be one of your ideal clients, correct? As
Yep.
a corporate client. Now, if you look at their statistics, the average real estate agent makes $30,000 a year, right?
It's low.
It's extremely low. How can you live on that? So it means most of real estate agents are contractors or have a full-time job somewhere else, or creating the income somewhere else, right? But are still paying the fees and are still struggling. So imagine if you could bring in, a marketing company to bring the income to 35,000 as opposed to 30 or 100,000, right? By showing them strategies on how to use social media, how to create relationships with social media. We used to do this with Remax. In fact, we did a number of offices, and we saw their numbers increase from a select few, not from all of them, because not everyone buys the lemonade. But if you can get 10 or 20% of Remax agents to increase their sales by using better tools and better strategies, because nobody's really teaching them. Nobody's holding them by the hand and saying, no, don't say that, say this. Right?
Yeah, they basically have a marketing department. Their marketing department's overseeing it all. And sometimes they do bring in new tools and things for it. The marketing department doesn't even understand the new tools. So how do they create a strategy around it? And I will say a lot of these bigger companies, what we're finding out, it's like the one we're dealing with right now. Their marketing department is 20 years ago. Their CMO is like 80. And I'm not saying the age has anything to do with it, but it seems like his age, he hasn't changed with the time.
Right.
So they're still doing the same approach they did back in the 80s today.
Yeah, agree. Most companies don't understand the horsepower they have under their hood. They depend on the marketing department that carry the load, and that's ridiculous. That type of strategy doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. If you have thousands of employees and you ask these employees to comment, we're going to post every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, please comment on it. All of a sudden, the algorithm on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever it is brings it to the next level. Then people start commenting on it. All of a sudden, you have a viral post. Right. But that's how you use horsepower within the company. We've done that so many times for roofing companies. Right. Because roofing companies believe that, the guy on the roof believes his job is to install roofs. No, that's not your job. Your job is to make profit for the company. Part of it is installing roofs. The other part is responding and posting to social media. So when you educate or re-educate every person within the company, especially for RE/MAX, right? How many people do they have? How many agents? How many secretaries? How many receptionists, right? If everyone gets involved in social media and you give them a tool like that, you can make almost any post go viral.
Yeah,
right?
they have 68,000 agents in the US.
Right, right. And they're not using, that's a lot of horsepower. If we can do it for a small roofing company with 40 employees, imagine what can be accomplished with that many people. They need to understand their horsepower, and this is part of their solutions. This is how we're going to solve your biggest problem. You can't find quality agents, right? So let's fix that. You're not making enough profit because you've got these other companies that are offering 1 or 2% commission, right? So either you're biting that bullet or you're using that bullet to your advantage.
For sure. Most people don't even understand that if you just make a post, the visibility of it is only 6%. Doesn't matter how many people you have, the visibility is only 6%.
Right.
But it's interactions that then started increasing. That's when the algorithm picks up on it. And now you're getting, for long, you're getting 60, 80% visibility. Then you're getting shares. And now it's getting 60, 80% of that person's. And then each share is 60, 80% of their list. So now that's kind of how the posts become viral.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm very familiar with the algorithms and things like that. But yeah, that's definitely true. They don't even know. Roofing companies probably not even posting. RE/MAX is posting, but they're not getting the traction on the post. The post is actually just going flat.
Right. And if you look at any post by a real estate agent on LinkedIn or Facebook, here's my latest listing. You get 3 or 10 likes on it, no comments, and it disappears. Then that agent becomes depressed, right? But if you coordinate with it, even coordinating within the office, I'm going to post a new listing tomorrow morning. Can I get some comments on it, right? And agents have families. If we can encourage the families to comment on it by giving them, a Tim Hortons gift card or whatever it is once a month, there's a lot of horsepower that's underutilized or not utilized at all by companies like RE/MAX. And a company like RE/MAX with the right strategy could take 30 or 40% of market share easily with the right strategies. So you go in with a strategy like that and saying, we are partnered with these other companies, and we're going to help you with your sales, your closing ratio. We're going to help you with all these different areas. But someone needs to go in as an advanced point to find out what these pain points are, so you know how to structure that presentation.
No, I definitely agree with that. Then you throw our software in the mix, and then we're helping that post actually convert.
Right. And everybody has to be working in the same direction. So you cannot go in and do a presentation that sends them off in a different direction. If everybody has the same goal to increase, salaries for real estate agents by 10%. Whatever is done by that group has to accomplish that. And everybody has to speak the same terminology, because then you can't focus on something else because it's going to confuse the client. So once everybody's focusing in the same direction and we have one common goal that everybody agrees with, and your software is part of that solution, and any company who is not delivering that result directly is left out of the mix on the first round, maybe brought into the mix the second round or the third round. Right? So what we do is we design systems to deliver relationships. Right now, you're working from bottom up. I would suggest working from top down, because if a CEO says, hey, I've heard of this system or this group of companies, he calls or sends an email to his a CMO or tech guy or whatever it is, call Joe on this, schedule a meeting with Joe and find out what this is all about. If it comes top down, it carries a lot more authority than bottom up.
Oh, definitely. Bottom up's much harder.
And this is why we believe in creating those trusted relationships top down.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier when it goes top down, because it's their boss sending it to them.
Yeah,
They're no longer being a gatekeeper. You've already passed the gate. Now the boss is involved. If the boss passes it down, you're probably doing a deal. If you've got the boss to sign off, you're probably doing a deal, a very high chance.
or even if the boss just say, I don't know what this is about, but would you please look into it? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I know some of the stuff we've had problems with, and that's just because it's just us in the mixes. We have to start with sales. And then what we found out with a lot of these bigger companies, sales doesn't have the budget. Marketing does. So even though that's the guys that will be actually really utilizing our software, marketing has to sign off. And now we have to sell the marketing department on it because they're the only ones with the budget in the company. I'm not saying that happens everywhere, but some of the bigger companies we're dealing with, that's what we're doing. And it sucks because it's like we're not actually talking to the decision maker, because what we're offering has to first go through sales because it's a sales product, but sales doesn't have the budget.
Yeah. Yeah. And sales can kill it. Or if someone feels threatened in sales saying, well, this could affect my job, or this could put my bonus in jeopardy, or this could tell my boss that I'm not as competent as I should be in my job, because there's a lot of insecurity in companies, and someone can kill the project for personal reasons. But when it comes from top down, I give you the example of the salt importing company. We go straight to the top. If the CEO or the board is not active on social, we find out who's around them, who is active, who can introduce us to the board or the CEO.
Yeah, that's actually really smart. My business partner's cousin was the head of global sales for AT&T, and now he works for a startup. But their whole the whole way that they scaled, because they do massive companies, is they actually find retired people just recently retired from the company.
Okay.
That are in the exact role that they want. And that is getting them ridiculous success off of it, because the guy that's now in their spot was usually their underling. So they find that guy, he calls him up and he respects anything he says, and they're just throwing him a little cut of it. And they've got Amazon, Walmart, Target, and they've done massive growth off that. It's very similar to what you're saying. You're saying more of the people that are currently in the company, where you find that inner circle and you get that intro. And intro from an inner circle is it's game changing.
Yeah,
because they'll listen to you.
Yeah.
You'll have a real conversation.
I mean, the system will automatically, find the people who are currently working, or have worked within the company. So we wouldn't discount anyone who has been retired from the company. You use whatever relationships you have in order to get to the person who's ultimately going to make the decision, or the board. Anyone who can introduce you to someone on the board is, fair game.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm sold in with kind of this structure, as long as we, meet the right terms where everybody's win for everybody. I'm definitely down.
Yeah.
There's
So-
nothing more to really say unless I.
Yeah. So I would say the next step, if you agree with this process, is to find out who your target demographic is, like name companies, name 50 companies or 20 companies in different industries. Then we can go out and find out, okay, who is actively trying to get at these companies? And do they have a product that kind of aligns, or a service that kind of aligns with ours, and present them with this relationship, and then have each one create a marketing budget to go after these relationships, and sign a non-disclosure agreement and sign a contract, basically saying, yes, this is what we want to do. But of course, a meeting of the minds has to be in place. And this is something that needs to be done long-term.
No, I agree. The only issue with this that I see is if we have to have a decent sized marketing budget, we're just not there yet. So,
but that's something you can come to the table and say, hey, this is our idea. We don't have a marketing budget. But because it's our idea and we're not putting in dollars, we're putting in sweat equity. As long as you're coming to the table and say, hey, this is what we have to offer, and this is our strategy, unless they are prepared to go out and do the same thing, they're better off dealing with you, because you're the one presenting the concept. And if you're presenting the concept, chances are you're the one who understands the concept. You understand the advantages, disadvantages, and shortfalls, and what the future problems are going to be, right? So if you present a concept that's already in place working in other industries, they're more likely to go with you than to go out on their own and reinvent the wheel for themselves.
well, yeah, and I can say creating our software is not the easiest thing either. We've had 2 years in and got, I don't know, $500,000 invested. So, and I can tell you, tech talent right now is hard to come by, because we're already getting an offer right now. A company that we just are doing a deal with is preparing to offer us money for our company. We're not going to sell it, but they're basically doing it because our tech team is so solid.
Oh, so just to acquire your tech team.
just to acquire my vision and the tech team, because that's all they really want. I mean, he's told me straight up. They just can't find the right tech, because the right tech teams right now, the going rate for them is ridiculous. And it's not hard to find cohesive units that work intertwined together. Because like our CTO, he just got an offer last week for $1.5 million a year just to manage a portfolio. So they're starting to find CTOs to be portfolio CTOs, manage 100 companies.
Wow.
Why? Because there's not enough CTOs in the market. So yeah. So I'm just saying that's a benefit, is, having that. People are trying to acquire that. They're not going to spend enough money on that anyway. So I'm not even going to look twice at that offer. But yeah, I'm just saying creating text is harder now than it's been in a long time, because the demand for it is so high. The price for it is so high, but finding the qualified people is a lot of newbies, but guys that have 20 years experience, it's just not as many.
Mm-hmm. Is security part of the system? Internet security?
Yeah, we're 3 levels from the internet, and then we're actually in a closed loop data system. So the data actually flows into a closed loop system at the end. So it's like 4 levels. We're actually HIPAA compliant with it, and we're right on borderline of being FICA and areas like that compliant as well. We just had to make a few tweaks, but we could even be compliant on those areas as well. Yeah, that was one of the first things we looked at was security when created. Remember, we started with, when we started this, we started in the healthcare arena.
Okay.
So we had to be very, very, very focused on HIPAA compliancy when you get into that. So when we created it with that in mind, and we took general HIPAA compliancy standards and then entered into a closed loop system on the fourth level for data storage. So to actually get in there, you have to break through 3 areas of encryption, and then you also have to break into a closed loop system and try to pull data out of a closed loop system, which is generally you lose data. You'll never actually get the data you want out of it because it'll break apart because the system was never created for the data to flow out.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question. I don't know, I went a little too technical there, but.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense from a layman's point of view. I may have one guy that specializes in security. I don't know if he would help you or not, but he worked on some pretty major systems.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably have to bring him into the conversation with CTO because I mean, I know the basic parameters of it, but the actual designing of it and stuff was all from the CTO. So you have to talk to him and see if there'd be value there or not. I know he's mainly focused, a lot of his attention has been on blockchain. So they're creating, his other company he owns works in creating blockchain for banking systems. And right now they're doing a deal with Mexico, the whole country, for security purposes, creating a new blockchain network. So, and that's supposed to be one of the most secure. So I know he's got a lot of, he's had a lot of work within the security area. We will eventually have to, pass that off because you can't have a CTO that's focused on security and the build of your project at the same time, and you just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Right.
You need a CSO in there. Or a CIO, just depending on what they call the title for it. Some people call it an IO, but they're really more security focused. But yeah, I mean, we'll eventually need that regardless. So, I mean, it'll be up for him having a conversation with him to see if it's see if he's got better knowledge on the area. I mean, if we're growing to the bigger companies, we're going to probably have to at least find a part-time person to work within that position.
Or an advisor or someone to create the overall strategy.
Yeah, I mean, because we're really a data capture firm, so we just use unique ways and automation on creating, capturing data, because that's kind of what we found is missing. There's a lot of different areas that has a lot of points of data, but they don't have great data in several parts of customer journeys, employees. Data is a massive problem in the market. So that's for the bigger companies, that becomes actually a good selling point. And then we offer the tools where it's saving them time, making them money, but also providing data on the back end.
How often do you meet with your team of advisors?
So right now we only have one advisor. We meet with him once a week. But so yeah, just one advisor. We've got some people that we meet with as well a different time during the week that can run like operations and things. So we have some ops people we have, and then he's more marketing focused. And then CTO we meet with once a week to define project, product, where we're at, what we're doing, what are the new projects that's on the horizon, and making sure we get his buy-in so we don't screw anything up with the tech side.
Okay. So you never really have a visionary type meeting or a goal type meeting or directional type meeting with all your advisors or all your key people?
We generally have a meeting around it once a month, but we skipped it last month and we need to probably get it back on the schedule. Yeah, I mean, we've been so focused on trying to get some of these decent sized deals in for white papers that we honestly have kind of dropped the ball there. I mean, to be full transparency, I dropped the ball. That's my fault.
Okay. I find when a company loses that vision or loses direction or loses the helicopter perspective, things can start going wrong very quickly. You can start working on the wrong things and the wrong priorities take over. You gotta stay clear. You gotta stay vividly clear because you're making hundreds of decisions, right? And if your focus is a little bit hazy, those decisions are going to start, being 1% off, right?
Well, that totally makes sense. We just got so focused on trying to get some traction with, get things out to the market where we've got white papers that we've kind of lost some of the time that we've spent on focusing on vision, because unfortunately right now I'm in the role where I'm trying to wear every hat, and it's a hard role to be in.
It is. And the white papers, is the white papers another name for, let's say, business blueprint? Or
white paper is basically, we're trying to get the implementations done for businesses so that we can get the how we actually improve this type of business by doing X.
So the white papers are client specific.
Client specific, yeah.
Okay.
So we've been trying to work on trying to get these things implemented in the market, and it's taking way too long with some of these companies to actually deliver what we need to get them to the market.
Right. And you need that to create the cash flow, right?
Yep.
Are there any white papers that are company specific, your company specific, that says who we are, what we do, what our goals are, what we're going to accomplish next week, next month, next year? Is there a business blueprint in place?
Yeah, we got a traction guide that breaks pretty much all those down. I will say our financial things have been way off.
The financial projections.
Yeah, way off. Yeah, we didn't expect the barrier to entry for some of these things without having the trust factor.
Right.
Trust is a big thing for a new product. It's hard to gain that trust.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's why we've been trying to get these things to the market with these other clients, because then that starts to build trust around the brand.
Right. Is there an agreement for them to give you a testimonial once they're happy with the product?
Yes, they'll give us. Yep, testimonials. They'll work with us specifically on the white paper. We'll get to ask all the questions that we can actually feed in the data so that they agree with all the components we're putting in the white paper as well. So yeah, we've got all that. I mean, one of the guys is even bringing us into the rest of the organization by the deal with an intelligent office, bring us to the whole rest of the organization. So that's definitely, he's willing to spend a lot of time on kind of helping us make this thing successful. We're just trying to get him to get his deliveries to us. That's pulling hair sometimes because he's an owner and he's wearing quite a few hats at the same time too. So it's been fun dealing with that. And then the other company, Alma, we're just trying to get through to the CMO. CMO has been our hardest problem right now for them.
So who's making the connections and the relationships with these clients? Who's doing that? Is that you again?
It's me, yep.
Okay. So if I were to look at your business blueprint, would I be able to see, on this date, we bring on, a salesperson or a relationship or a rainmaker, and this date we're doing this, and this date we're doing this?
We've got quarterlies. So it's not based on data, it was based on quarter. Yes, it's based on quarter, yeah. We've got that. Now the sales has to coincide with that area to make that possible. So, because we just don't have the budget to just randomly hire people without cash flow coming in.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that I would agree with you wholeheartedly there, because salespeople don't cost you anything, especially if they're performance-based.
Yeah, we've tried performance-based, and Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't help find better performance-based people. Don't get me wrong, but we've tried it and they literally just didn't do deals and then fell off the map. So it's just not worked for us in the past.
I have some people in mind that I've worked with in the past that have experience building trusted relationships with multinational corporations on the highest level. And I think those are the people that you need right now, because those are the people you could delegate to. If you could take sales and marketing off your plate and concentrate on the visionary status,
It would
right?
change everything. I mean, I'm spending like 98% of my time.
Yeah. And you need the cash flow.
Yep.
So, and this is one of the flags that I saw on the first call, that you're not client-centric from that perspective. And please don't take what I say as an insult. I'm only pointing out things that I see from my perspective. I don't care what company I go into, and you might as well know how I think if we're going to have a meeting of the minds. I believe any company, I don't care if you're building jets, if you're building coffins, if you're building cars, you're building whatever. There has to be a very aggressive marketing and sales process. The most important part of a car is the engine. I don't care how pretty it looks. If it doesn't have an engine and transmission, it's not going anywhere, right? To me, a company is only as good as its marketing and sales program. Again, the product can be secondary. You can have, I'm not going to say a shit product, but even companies that have aggressive marketing systems, if you look back at the tin days, of aluminum siding, these guys were butchers, but they were great at marketing and sales. The product was shit, but they still did millions and millions of dollars. Okay. So if I were to be an advisor in your company, I would say your biggest tool has to be, how you build relationships with future potential clients. I don't like to use the word marketing, because marketing is a negative word from my perspective. Marketing is another way of saying how you build trusted relationships. And how you build trusted relationships has to be with rainmakers who go in to analyze and figure out what's the problem with the company, and come back and say, okay, this company has this problem. One of us in the group of companies goes in as first or the spearhead of the group and help them solve that problem, and introduces the other companies as a foundation.
No, I totally agree with your process. I mean, and I agree with your synopsis that I want to be client focused. I just don't have really the amount of bandwidth, because I'm trying to wear all the hats, to be as client focused as it really should be. So, I mean, that's me being transparent to you. I totally agree with you.
Okay.
So a person like you could help us kind of achieve those areas. So.
Okay. So the question is, what kind of relationship should we have? And this is one of the questions we started a few weeks back. I believe I can help you bringing in those tools, and these tools should be able to double or triple your revenue, not on the short term, but on a semi short term basis. And it's no secret that I believe in sales and marketing, and I believe in rainmakers to develop those relationships. And I think you should start with 5 rainmakers, and eventually, 2 or 3 are going to remain and they're going to shine in your organization. But I think you should start with 3 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say is, get some notes together of what how you see this could actually work together, and then we could just go over it if you want, and just figure out, how you see this as being beneficial for you. We'll work through it and
Well,
go from there, unless you know off the top of your head now.
what do you think of an equity stake?
I mean, we've already got one with an equity stake. So, I mean, we do have some equity stake with it. Advisors generally go from 0.5% to about 2% is average that we see in the market. So depending on what they're doing, 0.5%
Well,
guys aren't doing
I'm
much.
suggesting more than just advising, because I have relationships with people who have relationships with these corporations. So if you bring in someone who has a relationship with the CEO of a multinational corporation, that's, to me, is of great value.
Okay. Well, I mean, what do you look for that? I mean, I was just giving you the general for just advisor. So what's a number that you feel comfortable with there?
Okay. Let me give that some thought.
Okay. Yeah. Give it some thought. I mean, we can look at that or mixed offers and, see what makes sense. Because sometimes you do mixed agreements where it's the basis of rev share, and so just come up with one that fits best for your model, and then we can discuss it and see if we can make that system work.
What, off the top of my head, I'm just thinking out loud here. What could you do for a company like American Express?
American Express. To be honest, I'd have to actually look further into them. I know very little about American Express. It's
okay. So
I don't want to BS you. That's what I'm saying.
Think about American Express. Think about Air Canada, WestJet.
You're going fast. Give me a second. Let me write these down, because no way I'll remember them all. Okay, American Express.
By the way, I keep forgetting to record. You can record these calls from your end, so I don't have to send it to you. We can both record these conversations. So yeah, American Express, Air Canada, WestJet. Is there anything, can we create a real differentiator to help these companies with your software? There's got to be a way.
Yeah, I just have to really look into them, because I've not dealt with any of this space. So my knowledge is just not there to know what they're currently doing. Looking up stats of how well it's working. I mean, I do think with where we're headed, we're not really there yet, but where we're headed with the product probably into next year. I mean, things like some of your customer service stuff will actually be able to be automated from us. Your front end stuff, your lower level people stuff can actually be automated of how to actually handle it. So it's not people driven, which right now is a huge thing, because they can't get those lower level people to work. Can't keep them in the business for big companies.
All right.
Some of the smaller ones have more relationships and stuff, but big companies, it's hard to keep a relationship in your company. And a lot of these companies don't have it. They're garbage. They kind of treat you like a number.
Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. What you mentioned Remax. What other industry or product do you think would be the path of least resistance for you to bring them in as a client? You mentioned healthcare, but is that still your primary focus right now?
No, it's not a primary focus right now. We've got a little more building to do for healthcare, but I think it will be eventually least resistant. There's a few more components where we can manage on-call doctors and stuff without actually having a physical call center. So we're working towards some components with that now, of how to actually do that. And then we'll start looking at other call center areas and taking off. I mean, we're never going to be able to take I'll call them tier 2 associates. We're not going to remove the tier 2 associates, but the tier 1 associates that are very basic, very little training, people that came out of high school, a lot of those things we'll actually be able to replace. So we're moving towards that that bot, that the system we're creating is moving more towards like a brain works with conversation. So basically anything that'll be first level, the software will be able to handle. We're definitely not there yet. Right now we're on the smaller end of the spectrum, collecting the controlled data, and then we'll be getting into non-controlled data where it's just random human conversation, to be able to interpret random human conversation. And then we take the two components together with our software and our programming language, and we can actually define, it'll start working more like a human brain does for conversation. So then that opens up the plethora of everywhere you can go with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, your real estate agents are definitely having a problem. Office rental spaces like your WeWorks, I mean, like them specifically, just this year has lost $176 million
Mhm.
in the first quarter, lost $176 million. So that's some big place, and everybody's trying to grow within that market. And so we're finding they're not even really great at marketing. They're not really great at, they're not putting automation in there. So that's an area, that's where we found interest with them. I mean, distribution is the other company. Almo is the largest independent distributor, and that's the one we've got through sales, and we're getting through to marketing. But the distribution companies would be potential as well, especially as we get that deal finished up. We're even looking around some backdoor dealings with them around the CMO now, because the VP of business development is so interested in software that we may be skipping through, maybe even talking to the CEO to get this thing pushed through. So companies like that is some of the ones we found specifically that's open to this. Home service hasn't been as open, but I think it's because we don't have trust there yet. Apparently they've been swindled a lot. That's what I've heard from some influencers in the space. Have said that whole industry has just been, people come in all the time with new marketing strategies, and you pay for it and they just swindle you. You don't make any money off of it. So they said they're not very trustworthy, but it would work really well for that as well. So that's some of the areas we've specifically identified as key areas.
Okay. I'm always of the mindset that you have to focus on at least one mainstream and become the experts at that stream before you expand. When you have the opportunity, while the whole world needs clients, the whole world is our platter, that's not always a great strategy. I think we need to find one stream, then expand on that once you become an expert on that stream. So let's leave the conversation here. Let me give it some thought about how we can work together and possible streams, because I do believe you need to focus, because you need to create that cash flow and either you start building a self-financing type company, or we start looking for investors, because at this point you're trying to do everything, and I see a great opportunity for implosion when you're trying to do that. I think you're at risk when you're trying to do too many things. So let's leave the conversation here. Let's talk again in a few days or a week or so, and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Joe. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend.
You as well.
Take care.